Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Knights, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. And if you're looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today we are doing chapter 19 of Feeling the Way. Denver is big, the largest city in Colorado, as well as the state's capital. It wasn't always like that, the size, not the capital. But back in the 40s, it was. Back in the 40s, it, as well as most large cities, started assimilating the surrounding cities and towns. So that while before, when someone would say Denver and mean the whole damn thing, the reality was much smaller. Now, all those cities are only remembered as names of neighborhoods, like Broomfield Industrial Complex or the Littleton Office Park, or, in my case, Aurora Heights. I'm in my way to where to I'm in my way to the city. No. I'm in my way from Amarillo via Interstate 27 to 70, and that took me to the city. Not the most direct route, but I didn't feel like driving on back roads. Aurora Heights used to be an industrial to be used to all be industrial, the west side of what was then the city of Aurora, abutting the then airbase. The earthquake of 52 destroyed about everything there, and the military handed the land to the city. The damage was sufficiently targeted that there's still debate on how natural the earthquake was. The city sold the land, and rich folks bought it up, giving themselves large estates with walls and gates and security that could put the military that used to own the land to shame. My destination wasn't one of those estates. The house was only a fraction of the size of those mansions on the outskirts of Aurora Heights, and unlike those, it was fully occupied. At least, when it was the last time I visited. I stopped on the side of the road looking at the house. Four-story gray brick, a few thousand feet in square footage, unassuming for the area. I suspected the neighborhood had complained about how ordinary it looked. It could have been a factory in some previous life, if someone didn't know the history of the area. I did, in part because I traveled so much and because of who lived there. I didn't want to come here. I'd much prefer either driving to Eddie's place in Longmount Valley or calling him and having him meet me outside the city. Lyman had a few fun clubs, although no gay ones. But I'd be working in the city, and tradition demanded I present myself to the city's elder. Martin Cormoran is the Martin Cormoran is the Denver elder, but believe me when I say that whoever handles security is actually in charge. Cormoran can refuse me resources and protection if I were planning on staying long term, but Breslow can make my life hell while I'm here. I left my bike and walked the length of the driveway leading to the house. If the elder took umbrage to my presence, it was easier for me to escape the property on foot than try to ride out. I didn't see the security, but felt their eyes on me, both the people watching me and the cameras. When the elder is in charge of the security for an entire city, he doesn't skimp on protecting his family. The one thing I had going for me was that Marrow wasn't in town. He and I have a thing going. He does everything he can to piss me off, and when I blow my fuse, which always happens, I fuck him senseless. Fun in the moment, but it is too much of a distraction for what I need to do. The door slammed open when I was still 100 feet away, and a blur ran at me. Then he was in the air, and I had no choice but to catch him. Why? What are you doing here? The cheetah in my arm asked, and continued before I could answer. I missed you. Why didn't you call? He tightened his leg around my hips, grinding his groin against mine. If you even think of leaving before we have fun, I will hunt you down this time. He looked at me, his expression of mix of want and anger. He hadn't entirely forgiven me for running off the last time I was in town. Wolf had created a situation in Minneapolis, and I had to go deal with it. I waited 10 seconds to see if he was going to start up. The way he spoke, barely breathing, and ran everywhere would make you think he had Adam's gift. I don't even want to imagine what Eduardo Brislow would be like with my father's motor mouth. As it is, he already lives up to the reputation of cheetahs being balls of pure energy. And my business is in the city, so I'm going to have plenty of time for fun. Good. You're staying at my place. Dad's house is full, as usual. I couldn't feel the usual. I could feel the usual hugging my legs. There's a story floating about that the Brislow elder didn't want kids. That at some point he had to be forced to get in bed with a woman, Eddie's mother, for him to be around. I don't believe it. There's way, there were way too, there are way too many Brislow kids for it to be true. I looked down at the 4 cheetahs attached to my leg. I didn't know their name. After the 10th kid, I stopped trying to remember them. Eddie, Stephen, Marco, and Paolo were the extent of who I remembered. The rest were just the Brislow kids, and 4 of them were anchoring me in place. Not that much of a problem until I raised my gaze from them to see the man standing in the doorway, arms crossed over his chest, a scowl on his face. Your dad's glaring at me, I told Eddie. Is it about me running off on you last time, or did I come at a bad time? He grinned at me. When is it ever a good time for him when an Orr drops by? As far as I know, every time. My dads will fuck him just like they'll fuck any other guy. The only one in my family who won't have sex with him, as far as I know, is Wolf. My brother has this thing about being the biggest, baddest, horniest guy around. So when he comes across someone who is more and all those things than he is, he can't help go all alpha on them. And that person is half his mass and puts him squarely in his place the first time my brother tried it. Well, Wolf hasn't set foot in Denver since that day. Yeah, Eddie sighs, and he'd enjoy it a whole lot more if your family wasn't in the habit of bringing so much trouble with them, along with the Cox. You planning on making his life difficult? I'm not planning on it, no. But, he trails off and grins. No, but, I'm investigating something that would have taken place years ago. Then we can pray to him that it doesn't end up with my dad kicking you out. At least, not until tomorrow, because tonight, your cock's mine. Anyone ever tell you how possessive you are? Eddie rolled his eyes. Hey, you're in my city. I get to do anything I want with you. I smirked. Try to put your cock in my ass, and we're going to see about that. It's still years until you have the authority to make me submit to you. Stop bitching. You're going to love it. He's wrong. I'm an Orr. I'm just a good actor. I raise a foot, evaluating the weight on my leg, and carefully step toward the house. Once I'm at the steps, I stop. Everyone off, I order, and I'm ignored. Eddie snorts. You're going to have to get me off yourself. This is way too nice. Edward, the elder says, and Eddie sighs. Dad, he whines. Just got here. Let me get off before I have to get off. Not in front of your brothers, the elder cheetah says. Eddie rolls his eyes. You'd think he is in society. Edward. Yes, Dad. Eddie unwraps his leg from me and I lower him. It takes a little work. It takes little work. He's my weight, but barely half my mass. Sorry, he's my height, but barely half my mass. I've suggested he spend time at Dietrich's gym and fix that, but his father won't allow it. No Brislow has any Orr gifts in them. I've pointed out Dietrich has others working for him who could get Eddie to gain muscles, but as far as the elder is concerned, if they work for my great uncle, it's the same as if he did it. Not that the elder needs them, but Eddie could do with more muscles. Come on, Carlos, Christian, let Wyatt go before Dad punishes us all. You don't want Dad to do that, do you? 4 young cheetahs blow Eddie raspberries. We're good boys, one of them states. Daddy doesn't need to punish us. Of course. That's why you spend so much time in your room, Luca. You're the oldest here. Set an example for your brothers. The one addressed looks up at my crotch and licks his lips. I doubt that's what Eddie means, kid. I'm not a kid. I smirk. Kid? Until your father lets me bed you, you're a kid. Dad! Lucas whines. Inside, all of you, the elder orders, and with protest I'm freed and the young cheetahs head inside, dragging their feet. I chuckle and Eddie smirks when Luca looks over his shoulder. What are you waiting for? The elder demands. I said all of you. He points inside the house. He means us, Eddie says before turning and doing as told. I follow him. The elder is before me the moment Eddie is inside. He didn't move. He was leaning to the side. Then he was before me. I hate it when he does that. Wyatt, he says. It could be a greeting, but his tone is more warning. Never heard him actually greet someone from my family when one of us is in Denver, but to be fair, I've never heard my father's greet him either. Elder Brislow, I replied. Have you seen Martin? I snort before I stop myself. I'll refer you to the earlier as to why I did it. It's going to be my next stop. It should be your first. I'm here now. You plan on kicking me out? You plan on causing trouble? I never plan on it, I reply, and he rolls his eyes. He steps inside the house, and I follow him. The entryway is large, but like the house, unassuming. It's about accommodating the volume of people who have lived here rather than trying to impress. The chairs are scuffed and worn. One of the picture frames is crooked, a cheetah couple holding a baby and smiling at the camera. The glass smeared with fingerprints, attesting to the number of kids who touched it. The elder's parents and him days after his birth. A cheetah is quietly arguing with Eddie. He's shorter by a few inches, but makes it up with mass. He's not even close to me, muscle-wise, but for a cheetah, he's a wall of them. Julian, the elder's second born, the angry one, the glaring one, the one easiest to pick a fight with, the terrified one. The elder has to know Julian uses his anger to hide how scared he is, how out of his depth he feels, how, unlike Eddie, he feels he has to measure up to a man impossible to measure up to, because he was picked by our God to represent him. Eddie doesn't see it. Eddie is sort of oblivious to people's emotion. He's all fun and games and figures everyone should be the same. He's in for such a shock the day he's handed the family. I followed the elder to the office near the entryway, the show office, the one set up to impress, with its ancient desk updated with state-of-the-art interface. The walls of bookcase with books on history, philosophy, theology, and hundreds of other subjects. 187, in fact. To anyone who knows what this is, they know why this exact number. Anyone who steps into this office sees that of an elder, an important man, a powerful man. I've seen the other office, the one of Denton Brislow, father, but never when being in Denver on my own. I only saw it when Arnold took me with him for a visit when I was 9. The only time one of my family took me. I suspect the only time one of them saw that office. I was the reason for the visit, my condition. The elder sits behind the desk and assumes the role his position demands. I sit facing him, and before I open my mouth, a weight drops on my lap. Eddie sprawling across it. Edward, the elder warns. Come on, Dad, I haven't seen him in years. And you'll get to sprawl over him as much as he lets you once I'm done with him. Don't worry, fucking is not on the agenda. I raise an eyebrow at that. We're society. For him to state we weren't going to fuck is not a good sign. You don't know what you're missing, Dad. Eddie gets a good grope in before getting off my lap. The elder snorts. You seem to be under the impression I haven't been in bed with him. Once isn't enough to really appreciate an Orr, Eddie states, and I'm left wondering just how many of my brothers he's had sex with. None of them have mentioned it, and it isn't like them not to brag about getting the son of an elder in bed. Once is plenty for me. Eddie closes the door behind him, and we are alone. The elder isn't a large man, but a God's champion doesn't have to exude power. Z warned me you might be dropping by. I nod. Elias made a report, so the assistant director informed us, don't even finish that thought. The elder warns. Mind reading is only one of the elder's many power. Is there a point to this meeting, then? I asked, not masking my irritation. You already know why I'm here. You don't even need me to explain my reasoning since you've already taken it. Read it? He corrects. If I'd taken it, you wouldn't remember it. I swallow at the casual way he says it, taking a thought from me. There's no way to keep track of which power he has at any one time. I disagree. At any one time, since that would mean keeping track of everyone who has visited him in the last year or so. But I think if someone could take our thoughts had visited him, someone would have made a note of that. The elder's smile tells me he's following my thinking and I've missed a detail. Something important, something that. Teleportation? Oh, fuck. He grins. Now that you've realized the problem your family has in keeping track of me, how about we address why you are here? I believe you call him wannabe? Anger flashes and I push it down. He's an elder. He gets to have things his way. I'm an Orr, but compared to this elder, I'm nothing. I force my jaw to loosen. You know that Joseph Abram was used by him in Amarillo, and he was coming here afterwards. The elder nods. I did a search for Stephen Mullen in the city database, and I didn't find anything. If it's his real name, he didn't use it while he was here. I didn't expect him to. He's been doing this for years without being noticed by the authorities. He's smart. He probably found himself another rich man he could con into providing what he needed for him to do what he wanted. Old rich man isn't something as rare in Amarillo, as rare here as in Amarillo. Denver has been attracting a crowd since magic was revealed to the world. Old rich men think that money will grant them absolution. I shrug. They should be living in San Francisco then. The elder smiles. Your family has a rather exacting standard on the people living there. The men who use their money to live outside those rules don't care to have said rules imposed on them. I shrug again. Then they aren't interested. They aren't that interested in living longer. Everything has a price. Money is just the easiest to pay. And it isn't like we're forcing any of Anakin's clients to live in our city. No, just giving them priority. Are you telling me Wannabe didn't come here? Are you telling me Wannabe didn't come here? I asked. We can keep talking about the right and wrong way to run a city without ever coming to an agreement. He's a Brislow, I'm an Orr. We have different views on life as a whole, not to say how cities should be handled. No, I'm saying that he was good enough to remain hidden. There's also weren't any there also weren't any reports of children going missing that stood out. Unlike Amarillo, Denver has a large population of undocumented people. He probably preyed on them. Oh, please tell me. This is. Damn it. Where did I flip? I did not even notice. Nod. Oh, come on. I have to redo all of this, don't I? This should all be passed. Holy cow. Did I. How far back? All right. I am not redoing all of that. I'll do this off. All right. I'm going to start. I'm going to mark this like that. I'm going to start here. I'll just grinned. Uh, I just got into reading it and stopped seeing, which does, doesn't bode well to this being a read and correct. That is one of the shoe. So with this, I sometimes get into this and just stop seeing. I just enjoy the story. He said, "Oh, he gets together with her. I'm an orc. I'm nothing. I forced." The elder nodded. Um, shrugged. Elder smiled. Shrugged again. I suspect one of the reasons that why it happened is that there's so much dialogue here that I just stopped thinking about it. I asked. We can keep talking about it. This can be present. It's a Brislow and Menor. We have different ones. Okay. I'm saying he was good enough to remain in. This is also okay. The elder nodded. I think this is where I'm at. Unfortunately, if they aren't going to report it, there's nothing I can do about it. And illegal alien is a federal problem. Ever since Diamond, it's been impossible to get close to the president. I nodded and kept my thought to myself. I kept my thoughts blank. Do I have your permission to run my investigation? He studied me, and I thought of my dad, of the effort they put in making me feel accepted in my own family, of how hard it was for them to understand me, how at a loss they were anytime they thought of calling me home. They wanted to tell me I'm one of them, but they knew, but they'd know it's a lie and that I could tell it was. All I can do is not get in your way. Martin is the one you need to convince to let you operate. I nodded. Then, if you let me, I'll go ask for his permission, he snorted. Edward isn't going to let you leave the house until you've spent the night with him. I'll tell Martin to expect you tomorrow morning. That concludes chapter 19 of Feeling the Way. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the rest of the story, that is up on my Patreon. This is not planned to be published anywhere else at this time. If you want to listen to this live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. The links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.